What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about a process called sun mapping. Now, sun mapping is the next stage in garden planning and one that I don't see being talked enough about. Now, when you're talking about your process of garden planning, the first step people always want to do is they want to pick out their location and they just want to start their garden right away. But there's a kind of a, if you're looking at the timeline of garden planning, step one is picking the style of garden that you want to do. It might be in-ground gardening, it might be raised bed gardening, container gardening, what have you. That's step one. Once you find out what style of gardening you really think you're going to love and want to try, step 1.5 is today's episode. Step 2 is implementation, and that's actually building the raised beds or rototilling the soil. Whatever you choose and whatever is going to work for you, that's step 2. But there's a step right in between that can be the most critical and most prone to failure, basically in the entire gardening process. So, because you could pick in-ground gardening or raised bed gardening and you really can't fail. You're going to have a successful garden if you do it correctly with either one of those. They have pros and cons to each. But if you don't pick the right location, you're doomed to fail. And I know that seems really discouraging, but that's what sun mapping helps with. Sun mapping is going to help you to know if the location that you've chosen is a good location. I know when I first started out gardening, you can go back and see these videos. They're out there, and I've never taken them down. I don't even know how old they are. Probably 9 years old at this point, 8, 9 years old. Man, I feel old whenever I say that, but when I first started out gardening, you can see those videos. And I picked this location that I loved. I just fell in love with it. It was this little dirt patch in between this big circle of trees. And it was like this oasis. I mean, you could go back there, there was nothing around. It was just trees all around you and then open sky above you. It was absolutely beautiful. But there was one issue, and that's that just because I saw clouds or sun on days didn't mean I was getting enough sun. Didn't mean I was getting as direct sun as I needed or the length of sun that I needed to grow plants. You know, ideally, if you're growing things like tomatoes and peppers, you want to get 9 to 10 hours of sun, minimum of 7 hours. If you're growing things like lettuce, leafy greens, herbs, you can get by with most of those with around 5 to 6 hours, but no less than 5. You're really going to struggle with 5 hours. And so the more sun you can give them, the better. But one thing that a lot of you ask is, okay, so I know that I need a lot of sun. I know that I need, the right duration of sunlight, but I'm going to plan my garden in the winter. How do I make sure that it's the right location? And the answer is with sun mapping. It's very simple. Now, you'll obviously notice that in the winter months, the sun is much lower in the sky. And what that causes, what that causes things to do is it causes the shadows to be elongated. And so you might have a location that you say, well, I could never grow here. I could never grow here because it's going to be shaded most of the day. There's a shadow most of the day where I want it to be. But you have to remember, the shadows are about 75% larger in the winter than they are in the summer. And that's because the sun is much lower in the sky. Lower in the sky, longer shadow. Higher in the sky, shorter shadow. It's all proportionate. I want you guys to set up your garden correctly. I do not want you to make the same mistakes that I made. And I don't want you to get your heart set on this location only to find out that it's a terrible location. So let's talk about that. Let's do it. I got these. This is the first thing you're going to need or something like it. This is some survey flags, or you can get, a lot of times the utility companies will come out and they'll leave their flags in the ground for things like water, gas, electricity, things like that. And they'll just leave them in your yard. Grab those and save them, throw them in your garage, shed, or whatever, and hold on to them because they make great sun mapping flags. But I got these from our local hardware store. This was $7, I think, for this whole big bundle. Anything works too. You can even use just like little wood posts. As long as you can tell where the sun is going to be, it really helps. This is just a good visible. This is a good visible reference. So what we're going to do is we're going to find a location that we're looking for. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick that location out, and we're basically going to draw our beds with these flags. I think this is a prime example of I could never have a garden here right now because our shed is casting a shadow over this location. But might it be a good location in the summer? And so what we're going to do is we're going to start by putting our flags in. I want my flags to be 3 feet apart because my beds are going to be 3 feet wide by about 10 feet long. So we'll just kind of estimate. Throw our flags in there. Not quite 10 feet, but that's totally fine. All right, so now that we have our stakes in place, we're going to do a process called walking back the shadow. And this can apply to any time of the day. And that's because on average, shadows are about 75% larger than they will be in the summer. And so what we can do is we can walk back to where the shadow is beginning. The shed is causing the shadow, right? And we're gonna walk back the shadow. We're gonna count how many paces it is to where the shadow ends. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 paces exactly. 12 paces. So what we can do is we can say, if it's 12 paces, how many paces will it be in the summertime? Well, it's 75% less paces. So times 0.75. And that means you can subtract 9 paces, or it's basically going to be 3 paces long. So all we have to do is go to where the shadow begins and count 1, 2, 3. That means that at this time of day, at 2 o'clock, the shadow should be right about here. And if I can see that none of my flags are in this path of the sun, this is at most the longest that the shadow will be in the summer months. And that is called walking back the shadow. It's that simple. You can do it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You can do it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It doesn't matter. The shadow that is cast will always be on average about 75% larger than it will be in the summer. And so all you have to do is walk back the shadow. And again, it's that simple. All I did was I started where the shadow is originating from. I walked to the end of the shadow, and then I basically multiplied it by 0.75. And that is how many paces you can subtract. And whatever's left over is the remaining shadow that's going to be there in the summer. And it's that simple. And this way you're going to know exactly in the winter months where the shadows should be roughly in the summer. And I can say with almost 100% certainty that, believe it or not, this is right smack dab where the shadow ends in the summer months. And that's because we've grown a garden here for now about going on 5 years. And I can safely say that is right where the shadow is cast. And that is so cool to know that you can plan your garden right now for summer, and you don't have to have the sun above you to tell you where the shadows are going to be cast. One other thing to note too is that there's no leaves on the trees. And so what you want to do is you want to be very careful with things like this. See, in the back here, we have these fruit trees. And these fruit trees will cast a shadow. In the summer months, later in the day, they will cast a shadow. But it's just as simple. All you have to do is kind of see where the leaves are. It's a little bit more difficult because there's much less foliage to cast a shadow, but you can still see roughly where the shadow is cast, and you can still walk it back just the same. And so you just want to be careful of that too, because I think that's a big mistake, is that buildings, they cast a shadow all year long because they have solid walls. They block a lot of sun. But with things like trees, when they're spindly and they don't have any foliage, they don't block a whole lot of sun, and so you can definitely make some mistakes there. But if you're careful, you still can do it, and you can pick a really good location that is going to be ideal for your garden. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. Again, we got these at the hardware store. These are called survey flags. You can get these pretty inexpensively, but they are definitely worth it. $7 here for potentially hundreds, if not thousands of dollars lost with not properly planting your garden in the right location. So I'll take that any day. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. Let me know in the comments box below if you've ever tried this and how it's worked for you. And we'll catch you all on the next episode. All right, go big or go home, everyone. Bye.